and welcome to another Brewha video. In this video, we'll be brewing 20 liters or 5 gallons of kombucha. We'll be using the Brewha small 20 liter or 5 gallon kombucha brewing kit, which is available in the online store at brewha.com. Brewing kombucha is similar in many ways to brewing beer, as sugar source is fermented, with the main difference being the microbes used to ferment. With beer, fermentation is completed by brewer's yeast, whereas with kombucha, fermentation is completed by a symbiotic culture of bacteria and yeast, or SCOBY. Today we'll be brewing in the smallest of the Brewha systems, but the steps that we use can be copied with the larger systems as well, right up to our 15 barrel or 18 hectoliter system. The recipe is on the recipe page of our website, and while these are delicious recipes in their own right, variations on ingredients can certainly be made. Heating water. The first step is to bring the water to boil. The Brewha system includes a high-quality stainless steel immersion heater, temperature sensor, and power controller with the larger systems to heat the water with. Boiling the water kills any microbes and also sanitizes the inside of the fermenter, so that when fermentation starts, it is just the microbes you add that ferment, not any wild yeast or bacteria or molds that might spoil your beverage. The lid can be installed when heating. Just ensure that a port is removed so that air steam can vent, and always have the pressure vacuum relief installed and test it regularly to ensure it's working as designed. The hot basket is placed inside the fermenter so that it is sanitized at the same time as the water is boiling. Any good tasting quality water can be used. Don't use distilled water, as some minerals are beneficial to fermentation and pH buffering, so they need to be in the water. If RO, reverse osmosis, or distilled water is used, brewing salt should be added back in. There's an introductory article on water chemistry on our website which discusses more. Turn the controller on and start heating the water. Once the water is warm, about 40 Celsius or 105 Fahrenheit, and will readily dissolve sugar, pause the heater and add the sugar. Sugar shouldn't just be dumped in because it will drop to the bottom undissolved. It can be added into the hot basket where it can be stirred and dissolved, or some hot water can be removed to a pot with the sugar dissolved there, and then added back to the fermenter. If stirring inside the fermenter itself, just be careful not to hit the heating element or the sensor. Remove a little water out of the bottom port to see if any solid sugar had settled there, and return that into the hot basket. Turning the heaters off during this addition minimizes the risk of sugar sticking to the heater and scorching. Once the sugar is dissolved, replace the lid, turn the power back on, and continue to heat it up. Boiling. Once up to a boil, the power can be turned down to about 20%, and the water just simmered for 15 minutes. The boiling water sanitizes the tank, and the steam produced here will sanitize the lid. Flush a bit of boiling water through the side and the bottom ports to ensure that cold water is not trapped there and the heat sanitizes the port. Then rinse the outside ports off with a Star San solution so that microbes don't start to grow on any sugar residuals that might have deposited there. The pressure gauge can be held partway over the venting steam for a minute so it is sanitized, and or spray it with a sanitizer like Star San. To reduce the heat loss, it's best to keep the jacket empty during heat up and boil. Cooling water. At the end of the boil, turn the heaters off and add tea. Adding to the just boiled water will sanitize the ingredients. The spoon or mixer used to stir the additions should be kept on a sanitized surface, as we'll use it later to stir the cooled water. After a short period, about 5 minutes, remove the filter basket, then return the lid. As mentioned, keep a port open and always leave the pressure vacuum relief installed. Then attach cold water source, like tap water, to the jacket. Use a water pressure regulator on the inlet port of the jacket to ensure that pressure does not build up and damage the tank. It will take about 20 to 30 minutes for cold tap water to cool the water down to room temperature. Cooling time is dependent on the temperature and the flow rate of cold water and the volume of water being chilled relative to the surface area. So for this small tank, cool down is about 20 to 30 minutes. For larger tanks, it'll be larger, so for faster cooling, one of our plate chillers, either using cold tap water, or if it's not cold enough, pre-chilled water from our cold liquor tank, can be used with a plate chiller. There's a video on our website for more information on this. Add or pitch the SCOBY. Once the water is down to room temperature, about 20 Celsius or 70 Fahrenheit, first stirring it with a sanitized spoon or using a mixer. Stirring it serves to equalize the temperature as well as introducing a bit of oxygen. In the larger tanks, after removing any sediment that settled to the bottom port, oxygen can be bubbled up into the wort to equilibrate the temperature. When using an aeration stone to put the oxygen in, put it in boiling water for a few minutes first to ensure that it is sanitary. Once the temperature is uniform, add the SCOBY according to supplier instructions. In our case, we'll be adding about 10% by volume kombucha from a previous batch. This will inoculate our tea with the SCOBY, as well as dropping the pH a little, making it more acidic, to help minimize the risk of harmful microbes like molds getting established. Fermentation. Once the SCOBY is added, we put a gas-permeable covering over one of the openings. We want to keep flies and dust out, which might carry harmful microbes, but let air, oxygen, in. We're using a coffee filter, but tight woven cloth also works. Unlike beer production, where oxygen is only needed early in fermentation and harmful for flavor later in fermentation, oxygen is necessary throughout fermentation when making kombucha. With the 208 to 240 volt systems, temperature can be maintained throughout fermentation by setting the temperature set point and keeping the heaters on auto. If fermenting above room temperature, put the power output to less than 3% so the heating is very gentle and there isn't any risk of scorching. You'll want to heat the fermenter if you're wanting to elevate the fermentation temperature above room temperature. The power controller for heating is only needed if you're wanting to ferment at or above room temperature. If fermenting at or below room temperature, then you only need a water chiller to regulate fermentation temperature. Carbonation. To know if your beverage is ready for consumption, fermentation can be tracked by monitoring the amount of sugar, using a hydrometer or refractometer, and comparing the amount of sugar at present to the amount that you had at the beginning. As yeast consumes sugar, they produce carbon dioxide and ethanol, so less sugar means more carbon dioxide and ethanol. And with SCOBY fermentation, progress can also be tracked by measuring the pH. Using a pH meter is the most accurate, but strips can also be used. As bacteria consumes ethanol, it produces acids. Acids lower the pH. Acidity below 3.5 is the target, and below that according to taste. Once you've determined that the kombucha has completed fermentation, the pellicle can be removed. The pellicle is the floating cellulose puck or mother, and the kombucha carbonated. Carbonation can occur by adding a bit more sugar. First, you sanitize the sugar by dissolving in boiling water, and then you add it directly into the fermenter. And letting the kombucha carbonate naturally as the yeast feed on the new sugar and produce carbon dioxide. Or a regulator can be used and gas added to the tank. In a commercial setting, there will be CO2 tanks and commercial regulators to add CO2. For pilot systems or home brewing, there are many regulators on the market that use mini gas tanks such as the blue CO2 bottles by SodaStream and their competitors. There are carbonation gas charts on our website, but the level of carbonation depends on your tastes. For kombucha stored at 20 Celsius or 70 Fahrenheit, a low-level carbonation typically will need about 8 psi of carbon dioxide for 3 to 4 days, a higher level for higher carbonation. For faster carbonation, first purge the air out a few times to remove the nitrogen and oxygen that is in there so that more CO2 is present, or bubble CO2 up using the racking arm. If putting gas in below the water level, be sure that the beverage doesn't infiltrate back into your gas line, which will contaminate it. So either use a check valve or run the gas line above the water level, so if the beverage enters, it doesn't reach the regulator. If adding a flavoring, if not added to the tea at the beginning, it can be added now. Whatever you add, ensure it does not have synthetics or oils that might harm the microbes. In our case, we'll be adding a hibiscus rooibos tea. We'll be putting it into boiling water and adding that tea directly into the fermenter. Storage and serving. To preserve the high quality state of your beverage, it should be stored at or around fridge temperature. Our water chillers can be used to run ice cold water through the jacket of your fermenter to lower the temperature. Note that since more CO2 can dissolve in water at lower temperature, the gas pressure should be lowered for a given carbonation volume. You can search on our website for more information on carbonation. Once chilled and carbonated, it's ready for serving. can it, keg it, or connect it to one of our dispensers for direct serving from the tank, and enjoy it. For kombucha, remember to keep 10% for inoculating your next batch. This can be done by keeping the racking arm pointing up. The volume from the top of the racking arm to the bottom of the cone is approximately 10%. With the racking arm pointing up, when the kombucha runs dry, the remaining kombucha can be removed out the bottom port. Sanitize the exterior first. I hold a pot of just boiled water over the port and then spray it with Star San. And that's how easy it is to make excellent kombucha on the Brewhouse system.